Hey YouTube, welcome back to New Rock City. I'm your host, Stephen Moss.
Hi, YouTube. I'm your co host, Lauren Tiz. Welcome.
Each week on the show, we bring you a brand new band, we interview them, and play some of their music for you. Today, we have a special guest. On episode 16, we have Pete Zen. He is. Hey, Pete, thanks for coming on the show.
Welcome.
Thank
Welcome,
you.
Pete.
Pete, you are you're the lead singer and guitar player for a band called Jet Jag, and
Yeah.
you also are a music producer out of Landmine Studios here in New Jersey. The first thing I just wanted to bring out and was how I got to know of you. On episode 8, we had a musical guest named Brian Quirk on the show,
Yeah.
and he was in the band, or he is in the band, My Cousin's Girlfriend's House.
hmm
And Brian spoke very highly of you and your work, and said that you produced many of his albums and his solo work.
Yeah. Brian's the best. He's a great artist and a great character. And he comes in and he comes in with like a skeleton of a song and we'll just like build something in the studio that day. He's really easy to work with. And he's got like this whole huge plan for his new song that's coming out. So I'm really stoked that like that's coming out soon.
Awesome. I wanted to ask you, what is it about Brian's music that made you want to go back and work with him again?
It's really just the fact that like I believe in his project and that he's so easy to work with. I recorded his other band, My Cousin's Girlfriend's House. I actually like finished them up maybe like 6 months ago. Actually, you know what? At the start of the pandemic, was the last session I had with his other band, My Cousin's Girlfriend's House, and we finished that session, and then it was pandemic time. So they still haven't released their EP from then, but it's probably coming out pretty soon. But yeah, I met Brian through that band, and we've just been working together ever since.
Well, very cool. So yeah, so he recommended us. So shout out to Brian. Thank you so much for getting us introduced.
Hi, Brian.
Hi, Brian.
So on this show, we've had many bands. We've also had one owner of an independent punk label in Canada called High End Denim Records. Nice. And now we have a producer, which is yourself. So this is cool because I'm trying to touch on every aspect of making a song and get everyone's unique viewpoints. So I wanted to ask you, in your opinion, what separates a good song from a great song?
I think like somebody's like true personality in a song, if they can convey that in the right way, then it's going to be a big song. Because you can write like a great pop punk song, you know, with no personality, and it can do well and it will find its place. But if you really want to be like iconic and really make your own waves, I think that being true to yourself and writing lyrics that are specific to you and really, you know, taking influence from other bands is one thing, but, you know, copying a band's total vibe and everything is not the way. I think just being true to what makes you unique and what makes you cool as an artist is going to be what actually blows up your band.
Along those same lines, what is one aspect that every song must have to be considered a solid song?
Well, it's gotta, one, be catchy, so people want to listen to it. Depends on the genre. Like if it's metal, it's gotta slam. It's gotta be heavy. It gotta make you break shit. If it, you know, if it's pop punk, it's gotta make you, I don't know, want to skateboard and do whatever that, you know, is. I think it's just got to be real, and it's got to really fit the genre and push it in the best way. And sometimes that's met with revolt, you know, like if you're an easycore band, or if you're, you know, if you're playing pop punk with breakdowns, when that first came out, that got, you know, met with a lot of resistance. And then you have bands like 4 Year Strong now who are, you know, leading it, or A Day to Remember who are leading it, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, I forgot to bring that point out. Not only are you a producer, but you do it in different genres.
Yeah.
And that's pretty cool. That's an interesting mindset. So how do you go into producing songs and then switching gears depending on the genre? That's pretty cool. How do you do that?
Well, I try to treat it like I was just saying, like genres do, like if it is a metal band, it doesn't have to slam. But I try to, like when I get in with a band, I try to figure out their personality as a band and really roll with that. Like if the song needs writing and it needs like structure work and melodies aren't fitting, you know, structures and stuff, then I'll straight up tell them and say like, listen, I think you need a couple more days in the studio to to like develop the songs a bit more. I don't know. I sort of just like feel out the band as we record. If I can meet up with them beforehand or I see them at a show, that's great. But it definitely just depends on the band, you know?
You kind of touched on my next question. When someone writes a song, for the most part, it's a very personal and intimate subject matter.
Yeah.
How do you approach the sensitive task of discussing changes or rearrangements to an artist's songs?
Yeah, well, that's another thing too. I feel like I can usually go either way, whether a band wants me to just focus on sonics for the record, like the actual sound of the snare or the sound of the guitar, or I can totally rehaul their stuff, which I've done for plenty of bands, you know.
Oh, that's
and take
interesting.
on-
So that part
Yeah.
changes based on the band that you're dealing with.
Yeah, and you'd be surprised. Not like a lot of my bands, they're hit or miss, you know, with what they want to do with me. But a lot of bands in general, especially sort of just like dropped into a huge label right away
Gotcha.
situation, they have a lot of writers and they have a lot of, you know, songs are handed to them and they sort of pick, you know. So it really depends. But if a band comes in and they're just like rejecting anything that like I'm saying, that gives me a hint like I need to take a step back and
Gotcha.
just let them take charge, and I will guide them if they need help, or if they're arguing amongst themselves, you know, then I will step in and be like, I think we should lean this way. Again, it's your band, like whatever you want to do, I want to make sure the music is sick. But personally, I think that this would sound cooler and this would be way more iconic, and I use that a lot in the studio. I
Gotcha.
try to do bigger picture stuff.
That's cool. Yeah, I just kind of imagine that would be kind of an area that could kind of feel like you're walking on eggshells, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't want to start like a band like fight if like one person in the
Fighting.
band is like with you
Yeah,
and
like-
one's not. You don't want to like
You don't want someone to
like,
go,
she's
see, I
right,
told
he's
you.
wrong," like, you know, like you definitely don't want to do that. And I've had like, not because of me, but I've had bands like really argue in the studio in
Oh,
the
man.
past. And,
I'm
like,
sure though.
Yeah, I mean it happens.
That's gonna happen. It's gonna happen with the territory.
Yeah, exactly. And I just tell them that like, listen, you know what, like I don't care. Like I think you guys should argue to an extent in the studio, but if you leave and you're like, when you leave, like you guys should still be best friends. Just know that you're all fighting for the bigger
Mhm.
picture that makes
Yeah.
a great song, you know.
Like hash it out between yourselves, get it out, and let's get out the
Yeah,
best
and I think that's
products.
natural and that's fine. And it is a little weird sometimes, but
I'm sure.
like, it's just because people are passionate about what they're making, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah, that makes sense.
makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
You know, it's funny. Those of us that have not made music, we can kind of almost romanticize the studio
Uh-huh.
and say like, oh, it's got to be so great going in the studio and doing this. I had the privilege to photograph a studio session with a band called Amigos from Netley, New Jersey.
Oh, cool. Nice.
And we were in Brooklyn, and it was really an eye-opener to me that, like, no, this really isn't romantic. This is actually work.
Yeah.
Like, I don't remember the time, but we were there, like, stupid early in the morning, and we didn't leave till, like,
Yeah.
until, like, night, and, like,
Oh,
like it's real work.
Yeah, it is. I mean, there's definitely sick moments where it's like you capture an awesome epic scream, or, you know, the vocalist is trying so hard he's vomiting or something. You know,
Yeah.
it's like
Damn.
awesome, crazy stuff. But then there's me sitting there for like 24 hours editing nerdy stuff. You know, like editing 1,000 vocal takes on top of each other
Oh,
to
man.
fit perfectly. You know, and that goes with everything. That goes with like being in a band too, and
yeah.
you know, shooting photos or booking shows. It's all, you know how it is. It's a lot of
Yeah.
editing, a lot of behind the scenes. Even the same with podcasting, right?
Oh, yeah.
You know, so
I don't think people realize how much editing goes into either.
yeah.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of behind the scenes work.
Yeah, I did some audio editing to All the Crowded Rooms podcast out in Philly. I'm not sure if you know them. But
I'll
I
have to
did
check
like
that one
all
out.
the like audio editing for them, just cutting out like blank
Okay.
spaces and stuff.
Gotcha.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So that experience with Amigos kind of led me to this question, and that's, what's an aspect of producing music that you didn't fully understand when you were just a musician? So, like, is there a set of skills that you use as a producer that you don't really use so much when you're just in a band?
Yeah, I would say like song structuring, but at the same time, I was also like got into recording because I couldn't afford myself to go to another studio. So I was recording my own bands. So I feel like I have a little bit of a weird perspective with that, because a lot of the times I would record like a full song with drums, guitar, bass, vocals, and then show it to my band, so I was writing in the computer instead of like writing with my band. But I mean, in general, like for my solo stuff, what I do is I do the opposite of what a producer would want, just to get my brain out of that zone. And I just write like 1.5-minute long songs with no structure, really, and I have a bunch of stuff I've been working on that. But when a band comes in, it's kind of good if they don't think like structures or melodies or whatever, just like barf it out of your body and make sure that it is demoed out, and then show it to me, and let's pick the best parts and let's make it cohesive and radio friendly and all that stuff, if they're going for that, so I guess it just depends. Again, it depends on the band and stuff, but when you're writing as a band, you need to just like worry about the personality of your band more so than the technical structure or the technical key or anything.
How do you feel the acoustics or the physical room plays a role in the mood or the sound of an album?
Oh, it's huge. It's huge. Like at our studio, the room is pretty small. So when you record drums, you get like a super punchy, tight sounding thing. And if you want it to sound like a huge like arena rock record, you're going to have to blend in crazy reverb and samples and all that stuff. So in a way, it's really nice to have a tight room because you can sort of work with it more. But it's also like when bands are in the studio and they hear back their stuff, like instantly, there's a little bit more heavy lifting you have to do. My band, Jet Jag, we just went to California to record with Kyle Black, and he had like an enormous room. So I totally wasn't used to it. And we went in there, and
like the high ceilings and all that.
Yeah, exactly. They hit the snare drum once, and I was like, what is that? Like, that is not how my room sounds. He's like, yeah, man, you gotta work with what you got. I'm like, dude, we are not on the same playing fields at all. Like, but I mean, he's still a great engineer, but a great room like goes a long way,
There's a really cool documentary that the Foo Fighters made a couple years ago called Sound City.
Yeah, I've seen that. That's cool.
And it shows them going to different studios in different parts of the country, and how they all have like a different vibe and a different sound. Totally. And I just thought that was so cool. So if anyone's watching that's interested in producing or the different sounds, definitely check out that documentary.
Totally. I mean, it's kind of weird nowadays too, though, because there is so much like processing you can do. So that gap is a little bit smaller of like getting a huge difference between like a huge room and a small room. But you see it a lot in metal and like hardcore more than other genres, because you can always like, if you're in a big room, you can always put a couple baffles around you, and now you're in a small room, if that's your goal, to be like an acoustic intimate thing. But you hear that more in like hardcore and stuff. Like people will go to Kerpaloo from Converge for like a super punchy, sort of a thing. Or you can go to, I don't know, like David Bendith or something, who has like a huge room. I don't even know where he records, but then you would sound like Green Day. So it doesn't matter so much anymore with like modern rock music, I would say.
Yeah, I do. Later on, we talk about like Pro Tools and things like that. But since you brought it up, I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah.
So if you put those effects in Pro Tools, as opposed to like going into that room with the cathedral ceilings, is it still just a little off, or has the technology gotten to where people really can't tell that if it was in that room or just a effect?
Yeah, I mean, especially for drums, it's totally different. It's gonna sound more processed because it's a stagnant, not reflecting reverb. It's just poof, it blends into the next hit of the snare. It's not reacting correctly. But I will say that like you would think if somebody has a really big room, right, and they're recording guitars, you would want to set up a room mic as well. But because guitars are the way they are, you don't want to set up a room mic because it's going to get too messy and too crazy. Like you can't tame it. So in that circumstance, usually you would just mic up the guitar cab and add in the fake reverb instead of using the real reverb. So sometimes it's great and sometimes it's not great. Like drums, I would say it's definitely great to have real big rooms that pump and react correctly. But something that you need to be level across a whole song, like a guitar, it makes sense to like keep it controlled.
Yeah. Well, you know what's interesting is you specifically brought out the drums, and there was a fascinating segment on NPR a few years ago about drum machines,
Yeah.
and they talked about Stevie Wonder, and they looked at his album sales and how it coincided with when he used a real drummer
Hmm.
to when he started using a drum machine. And they actually had some like neurologists and brain specialists, and it was so fascinating to me that they brought out that bands that use those fake drums and drum machines
Hmm.
statistically don't do as well because your brain,
Really?
yeah, they brought out
Wow.
in NPR
Hmm.
that a human drummer is always just fractions of a seconds off, you know, and
Yeah.
and that's just enough to keep your brain interested.
Hmm.
Whereas
Oh,
when people use drum machines and it's always spot on,
Yeah.
that it becomes monotone and it kind of like
yeah.
fades in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I
could
could see that.
totally see that because it's
So
like, yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't listen to super polished stuff, and
yeah,
I'm a producer, right? And then my goal is to like make people sound polished. So what the heck is that? I don't know.
yeah.
But
So
either
I
way,
thought that was interesting.
editing drums is a common thing now.
Yeah,
Even on real drums, it's still going to be like put on the beat regardless.
sure.
Yeah. Well, sometimes unpolished is good too.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Just depends what you want, I guess.
It depends. Exactly. Yeah. It depends on what you want to listen to.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people get asked, you know, what their favorite music. But as a producer, I was curious, what were some of the producers that influenced you as you were growing up?
What's his name? Jerry Finn, who produced like all the Blink 182 early stuff. He was a big one for me, but it's not like I really idolized producers so much as I idolized like the amps that the producers used.
Gotcha.
Because I don't know like how much of like a helping hand those producers had in those records. It could have just been all the band.
Gotcha.
It could have been one of those situations where the producer's just taking a step back and making sure sonics are great. But like, I'll tell you what, I had like a CD player that had a high boost and a low boost on it when I was like 8 years old. And I like messed with that a lot,
Oh, that's cool.
but I fought being a producer for a long time. I just wanted to be a band
Really?
guy.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. I
Wow.
just wanted to tour and like play shows, and I booked shows too, but I really just wanted to like play music. But
Gotcha.
I came to the realization that like I can be on a million different records, by producing.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's
So,
true.
yeah.
If you go back and look at there's three that I wrote down, three producers that I think are just incredible because the sounds on the albums were things that they were able to specifically pull out of the artist. And they
Yeah.
were able to work with the artist in such a way that the things you like about the artist is because of the producer.
Okay.
First one I wrote down was Butch Vig.
Yeah.
From he's actually in the band Garbage, but he produced Nevermind with
Yeah.
Nirvana. And what's amazing is if you watch some of the documentaries about that Nirvana Nevermind album, you realize a lot of those raw emotion sounds, like for example on Something in the Way,
Mhm.
that was all Butch Vig.
Totally.
And he went out of his way, like for that song, he had Kurt lying on his back on the floor of the studio. He had
No
all the lights
way.
off. Like
Yeah.
he was setting that mood or setting that
Ah.
environment so Kurt can sing that in a way that just really touched people. It's amazing.
Wow, I never
totally.
knew that.
Yeah.
Nirvana's like a perfect band for a producer because they're like messy and dirty, and then
Yeah.
like you're fighting them to tame them up or
Right?
get them to be crazier or whatever.
Yep.
That's awesome.
The second one I wrote down was Ross Robbins. He produced Korn's, many albums from Korn, but like the most notably the self-titled album.
Yeah.
And same thing, he was able to get those raw emotions out of Jonathan Davis, and get him in that frame of mind to where he's singing in such a way that the songs just become uniquely Korn.
Yeah. Those bands, like both those bands, have like such incredible star power that is just so like hard to find nowadays. Like Brian Quirk has amazing star power that is just uncontrollable. You just have like when he's in the studio, I have to like calm him down, and I'm a pretty like crazy guy like when it comes down to it, and he needs to be tamed. But I just take like these little things that he just says in the studio. I'm like, that's the line. That's cool. That's the best melody in the entire world, you know. And he spits them out. Like he's just so fast with all that stuff. So that's why he's so great to work with too.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool.
The third one I wrote down, because this is really cool. If you go back and look at the documentaries on this album, there was a lot of almost, well, like fighting in between the band and the producer. And this was Bob Rock and Metallica's Black Album.
Yeah.
You know, James Hetfield was very much as he's on the records as saying, you know, these songs are my babies. Don't touch them. And then, you know, Bob Rock would be like, well, let's try this. And James would be like, oh, yeah, fuck you, you know?
Yeah, literally.
So, but he was able to, you know, keep his ego under check and just kind of push through and get those sounds. And that album is iconic to today.
Dude, I love Metallica, but if I had to record Lars, I literally could not. I would like hit record and be like, yeah, man, great job. And I would just program all the drums later because that guy freaking sucks. Like, he's a great visionary for the band, but he's like not as big as his name is. You know what I mean? Like he is not as good as his name. Like Travis Barker, on the other hand,
now that's a real drummer,
in my opinion. You know, like he's gonna be one of the greats. Like he's really, really good. But Lars,
definitely.
Lars, dude, fight me. You suck.
Well, I could do a whole podcast about how I hate him.
We're calling you out, Lars. We're calling you out.
No, he's fine. He's fine. He's whatever. I just watch him recording sometimes, and I'm like, dude, you playing Metallica? Like, just rip it.
Right?
Just play a little faster, you know.
So that's cool. So that just, you know, was talking about your influences. But now back to your work. Mm-hmm. What's one of the first things you listen to when you get a new track? Like, so like say Brian, he says, hey, I just worked on this. What's some of the first things that you're looking for?
I'm looking for a catchy hook line. I'm looking for the vibe of the song, and I'm making sure that it's not too boring. And then I'm also, usually when they send me demos, it's just like an acoustic guitar and vocals, or just a guitar and vocals, or a band practice or something. But I try to listen for like huge production moments and which way the song is going to lean. Like Brian's stuff is definitely a little bit more produced than his band, which his band just wants to sound like a 90s pop rock band or pop punk band, you know? So yeah, I mean, it depends on the song, but I try to listen for like what this song is like asking for, whether it's like a bunch of claps or like, you know, breakdowns or synths, or, you know, just hearing the song and seeing what the final product would sound like, and I'll give them my notes on that.
So earlier we touched on things like Pro Tools, and, you know, there's GarageBand, etc. So with programs like that being so accessible and easy, everything's being done on the computer nowadays, and people are able to self-produce like never before. What would you tell a band are the major reasons why they should still come into a studio rather than like some home recording or self-producing?
Yeah, I would say a good producer, it's going to make your record sound way more real, and it's going to sound bigger because, you know, you're going to have access to way better mics, way better amps. And then it's somebody who's going to hear your song and hopefully has like worked and helped bands achieve things. They're going to hear your song for the first time and be able to tell you what's great and what's not. And then also as you're tracking, it brings you to a new level of standard, you know, of how tight things can be, how crazy things can be pushed. I think it's always a good move to at the very least, like go record with somebody who has like a strong personality and makes big changes. And then maybe, you know, spend more money on sending it to somebody bigger to mix, you know, who can just clean everything up and make it sound like totally finished, if like money is the reason why they're recording themselves.
One point I thought was interesting was voice memos. You can now just kind of put stuff in voice memos at any given time, and how that's, you know, a powerful tool.
Totally. I'm helping write an album for a band right now, and their previous writer was the guy in that band Slaves. And the way that they they told me this is my first time like full like voice memoing back and forth writing.
Oh, okay.
And so that's how they did it before is the producer would send them like a little scratch track and say, hey, send me your thoughts, send me some vocal ideas. And then if it's no good, then you send yours back, you know, so that it's great. It's great to be able to just send that back and forth. But at the same time, it'd be awesome to just have the band in the studio for a couple extra days early on rather than do something like that, you know?
So as cool as it is, it still doesn't, you know, negate being in the studio.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. Because if you want to convey a better idea, you know, you can move and like show them like what you're thinking and be like, yo, picture the whole crowd like moshing at this part, you know, and you can show them a part like that rather than just like but you know what I mean? It's like kind of hard.
But one thing was cool when I was doing some stuff, research on voice memos, as I found out that the song Last Days by Chevelle, the opening lyrics or the opening lyric that you hear in that song is the exact audio from his iPhone that he recorded in voice memos.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
So you'll have to go back and check that out.
Yeah, people do that for sure. Like Charlie Puth, I think, does that too.
Now, I don't think I asked you, how long have you been producing?
Like for other bands, I would say probably since I was like 15 and I'm 26 now. So
Gotcha.
Wow.
A while, but I would say that like maybe in the past like 4 years, I like hit the mark where I was finally doing stuff that got traction for the bands.
Gotcha.
You know, it was a little bit of not having the right equipment. And then also like I never went to school for recording or anything. So it's like I was undoing some stupid things that I was doing before.
Okay.
Which I'm still doing today, but whatever, the records are sounding fine.
So the reason I ask is because I found this interesting quote and I just wanted your opinion on it. So one of the producers that has worked with Jack White from the White Stripes, he said this. He's been a producer for a very long time. And he goes, people don't play well anymore because they don't have to.
Yeah, it's true.
He said, for example, you know, people come into the studio and he says they can play a 4-bar section very well. And then they say, just loop it.
Yeah.
Do you find that bands have come to you in your years of producing with that same mindset? How do you see it's changed just from when you were started producing?
Yeah, I think I'm really lucky and all my bands come really prepared and usually really good musicians.
Nice.
And also like a lot of my bands are very, you know, they have no egos or anything. So if they need me to track a part, I'll track a part.
Very cool.
Know. But editing is definitely a thing. You can't turn a whisper into a scream. You know, you can't turn, you know, if you hit a pillow with a stick, it's not going to sound like a snare drum, no matter how much processing you put on it. So I think even though you're editing everything onto the grid and it's perfect, like the way that somebody picks and the way that somebody hits a drum or the way that somebody's voice sounds, you can only manipulate it so much.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
You know, but I mean, I think that's just a standard of today is for most genres is just pretty raw, is pretty like on grid edited music. That's what we're used to hearing, you know, because if we don't hear that from a big band like Green Day or something, we're kind of like, that doesn't sound finished or that sounds weird. You know, a good song is a good song, but you can still tell nowadays if like something is not totally gridded. And I mean, sometimes that works, but for the most part, I think you need to edit things and you need to clean things up.
Gotcha. Yeah, he just had a really neat point, though, because he said, for example, you know, recording in the studio when he started was all done on analog tape.
Yeah.
He said it was very expensive, and if you messed up, they actually had a person who specialized in splicing of the tape together.
Yeah, yeah.
And so he was like, basically, by the time you went into the studio, you were damn sure that you could play that song because it was expensive and you didn't want to pay for the extra tape.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I feel like they go the opposite direction now. You record everything clean and raw, and then you edit it up in the computer, and then you run it through vintage gear to get that sound.
Oh, wow.
You know, like I think right now, like a big sound.
Really?
Yeah. I think right now a big sound is like that hi-fi, lo-fi sound that you hear in a lot of like bedroom pop stuff.
Oh.
Like those records are made to sound like poopy on purpose, you know, like they're,
That's cool. So they actually have like vintage
Wow.
filters. That's cool.
yeah, there's like a million plugins.
Wow.
Like I was saying, like you can manipulate anything to a certain point, like especially distortion, just making it sound dirty. You can do that to anything, but I just got a plug-in the other day that you can change the shape of the singer's throat. So I was
Really?
working on somebody's vocals and I'm like, I don't know, it sounds like kind of like, I don't know the word, like milky and gurgly. Like it just sounded like kind of weird, and I wanted it to sound
Really?
more nasally, more like Newfound
Wow.
Glory. So
Okay.
you pick the part of the throat and then you drag it,
Wow.
and it like manipulates the voice. And sometimes you
Wow.
can
That's
tell like
nuts. I
there's-
had
you
no
can hear,
idea.
like artifacts in when you go too far, but when you give it just a little nudge, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, that's a little bit more of what we were aiming for.
Wow.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
actually pretty fascinating to me because
Yeah.
my right vocal cord doesn't work. I had some throat some surge like
Uh-huh.
injections and stuff to move my left vocal cord into a different position. That way I can speak.
Huh.
So
That might, I mean, if you
my
if you were,
voice
like,
does not sound like it used to before I had surgery. So I think that's pretty cool that
Really?
yeah, that
I
might
can get
work
something
to
to
your
play around.
advantage though, you know, like Bring Me the Horizon or whatever. The singers, he had
Oh
some
yeah,
shit that messed up his throat.
he blew out a vocal cord, and the
Yeah.
guy from Asking Alexandra, he blew out
Yeah.
his vocal cord.
Really?
You're just like them.
Yeah.
You're just like them.
Yeah, so
Steven,
pretty much. There you
could-
go.
Steven, you could still totally be a rock star.
I just
Yeah.
need to change my story. So instead of telling people it was because of surgery, I'll be like, yeah, I was in a
Yeah.
deathcore band.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or you
But,
could
I
say
mean,
something like you got shot or like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
were in like a bar brawl.
Yeah.
Make it interesting, you know.
There you go.
It just depends on the producer though, because like when we went to go record with Kyle Black out in California, he had me sing like whole parts and made me do it like 50 times. And then
Oh,
he was
that's
like, all right,
cool.
I'm instead of messing with your voice, I'm just gonna take the best parts from all these different takes. And that's another way
wow.
to do it. But I
Gotcha.
I personally cheat a little bit more because the band like aren't in the studio for a long time, you know. So I
Yeah.
try to take advantage of when they're there and use that time to focus on bigger picture stuff like huge songwriting changes and stuff like that.
That's cool.
That's amazing though, like the wonders of technology.
Oh,
I
yeah,
sound
it's messed
I
up.
sound so old probably, but wow, like that's amazing.
Yeah. It's totally messed up.
When you are producing an album, what's more like the most difficult problem production wise that you have to solve? Like, what's an aspect that you're like, all right, this is going to be tough?
If the singer is really not like locking in notes, because
Gotcha.
then I have to, you know, that'll make or break a song. If we'll finish up everything perfect and the singer is just having a rough day or is just not, you know, performing how they think they should or whatever. That's the hardest part because that's like such a psychological thing. Like if they think they're
Yeah.
not nailing it, then it just spirals down.
Gotcha.
You know, but we're tender, you know, we're trying to make sure that like they're comfortable and everything's turning out cool. But yeah, that's probably the hardest part is the vocals. As soon as you get to that, like that's the stamp on the song, that's the
Gotcha.
band's personality. So
Yeah.
you really got to focus in and make sure that they figured out what they want to do and how they're going to do it.
It's interesting that you said vocals because the same producer from Jack White was saying how, you know, when it comes to like the instruments, you can add filters, you can fluctuate sounds, but he goes, there still isn't a way to produce emotion. Like that still has to be
Yeah.
raw from the individual.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
I
that
don't
was pretty
mind
cool.
that though as much. Like if a drummer's sloppy or if a guitarist is sloppy, you know what? I take that back too, because even if a vocalist is sloppy, like you can just own that. And I feel like that's a lot of the times when we're just like maybe they were aiming to sound like Queen or something, for example.
Okay,
You know,
gotcha.
like and they wanted to sing like that, but their voice is just Motorhead. Like it's just
Okay.
you know, it's like, I don't know, man. I think like you should really just scream and we're going to distort it and it's going to sound cooler that way.
Yeah, it could work.
Nice.
Yeah, I think maybe just roll with whatever you're given and maybe enhance that and own it. I think that's
Okay.
what makes it cool.
That's
Gotcha.
good advice.
Yeah.
How do you know when to stop editing and messing with a song? Like, when do you know you got it right? When do you know, like, this is done?
Depends on the genre. If it's like polished pop punk, then it's gridded. It's perfect. Vocals are
Okay.
tuned. Everything's sitting good. There's some synths, some shakers, some claps, and it's done. The song is the song. If the lyrics are killer and it resonates with people, then that's sick. If it's like an acoustic artist or something, then it's sort of just going through the takes and picking the best emotion, like you were saying.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so it's probably per band, per genre. I usually ask the band for a couple references of what they would want to sound like when we're done, and I sort of aim towards that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you have any like a favorite musical project that you've worked on?
Yeah, there's this band. I mean, I love all the bands that I record. They're all like super different in their own ways, but a band that like a couple bands that I really like helped develop was this band Telltale from Richmond, Virginia. They're a really cool pop punk band. And it's just like we worked hard and they came all the way up here and we worked hard on it for like 10 days and then they got signed and it was like a great success story, so that was, and everything was smooth about the recording and so that was like a great success story. I don't know, like there's just been, it's all blurred. Like I've recorded a lot of different bands, and they all have awesome stuff and they all sort of like join other bands and then their bands come. So it's like, it's more just like I have people that I work with, like Brian, for example, that I love to have in the studio no matter what band he's in,
That's cool.
That's cool.
Now, what is one artist that you would love to produce an album for?
Ooh.
That's a tough one.
Yeah, I really, I don't know, because it's like a lot of my favorite bands are produced by like producers that I like too, so I don't want to take a band away from them
Okay.
and then have them hate me. I don't know, like if a dream band to come into the studio would be like Rotting Out, if you're familiar. They're just like a crazy punk hardcore band from California. Really? Yeah, and I just feel like you should check them out. The singer is like super iconic. He has a crazy voice.
Oh, cool. I love hardcore.
Definitely check them out.
Really cool to make something heavy, fast, and just
nice.
Iconic. Yeah.
We got to check them out, Steven.
Yeah, I definitely will.
He had some features on like Stick to Your Guns and a couple other metal bands and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just trying to think of like what's a great iconic band right now, and I feel like they're kind of cool. And he, the dude like went to prison for a while. Like it's
cool. Like, that's fucking awesome. That makes it like so much more
that he went to
interesting.
prison and he got caught for whatever he did, but like it's just they're real about their music,
Gotcha.
I love that. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
So earlier in the show, you had mentioned how when you were growing up, you actually did not want to be a producer. What was it that made you start to enjoy it and say, this is awesome, this is what I want to do?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I didn't want to be a producer. I just wanted to just be in a band and stuff more. I was like, oh yeah, when I'm like 40, I'll be a producer, like or whatever. I don't know. I had so many bands come to me and like I helped make so many cool songs and we saw successes and we saw what worked, what didn't work. And then, I started to love like all the nerdy stuff of like putting a mic a certain way and changing the sonics of it. I think it's just a really like nowadays I see it as like a really in-depth way of looking at music.
Gotcha.
So it's like super cool to just have a band come in if I've never met them before and they come in and I can just like build a crazy song with them. I think that's the coolest thing,
Nice.
Especially now, this is all I can do. I can't tour right now. So.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, what would be your advice for younger fans who want to get into producing?
Record your friends' bands for like burritos, like do it for really cheap. Get really good, find the best band in your area and record them. And then do your absolute best, like edit everything you have to edit. Do whatever you can to make that record sound good and help them release it. Like put on shows for them, talk about like what they're going to do for the next 6 months while they're pushing this record, all this stuff, like really be hands-on with this band, because that band, if they do well, all the bands that open for them, all the bands that they play with, all the bands they're friends with are going to know your name and want to work with you. Just do good work and really try to make something different. Don't just throw drum samples and use the same, amp pack that everybody else is using,
Gotcha.
especially now because everybody has them.
Yeah.
I get sent demos sometimes from bands and I'm like, this sounds pretty good. It's just sounding stale,
Gotcha. So when you say like be different, I don't know enough about producing to understand that. How do you put your own spin on things? Like, do you have your own style of producing? Like, what sets you apart?
I think it's like if every single person drew a dinosaur, everybody's dinosaur would look different,
Gotcha.
Like mine would probably be a kitty cat. Like, it's like I don't know.
Mine too.
Yeah.
Mine would totally be a kitty cat.
Yeah.
I saw your cat on
Yeah.
You had some really awesome pictures of you and your cat.
Yeah, my cat is 20. I'm gonna
No
say
way.
21 now. Yeah, I got her since I was like 8 or something. Yeah.
I have I have 2 cats. My now one, but the one cat I had, he was I think like 19, and we just had to put him down.
Oh yeah.
That's
Yeah,
tough,
we're
but-
fighting that right now.
Oh, are you?
Yeah. I
It's
mean,
tough.
she's still kicking. Like she's chilling, and she woke me up at like 3 a.m. last night. I think she has dementia or something.
wow.
Yeah, people don't realize that, but actually cats get dementia.
Yeah,
Just
I
like-
definitely
just like
love
people.
cats.
Me too.
I definitely
I
love
have-
cats more than anything else.
Yeah, it's funny because I've been noticing a lot of bands we have on, everyone has a cat.
Really.
Yeah, we
Huh.
should do like a special cat segment.
Where all the
Steven.
cats just talk to each other.
Right? Yeah,
No,
your
I
cat
was
is so
thinking,
cute.
like, like how Tupac has like Thug Life on his stomach. I'm
Yeah.
gonna get cat life. And then get, like 2. I'm gonna get this tattoo. I have on my chest covered up. I'm gonna get like 2 like panthers or something.
Oh, I love that.
You
I love that. That's an awesome idea.
Or maybe
Cats
when
are
my
the
cat
best.
Wubsy, which is what I named her when I was 8. When my
Wow.
cat
Aw.
Wubsy
From Wow Wow
dies,
Wubsy?
I'll get a tattoo of like a lion on my arm or something.
Oh, cool.
Just to power
Okay.
Wubsy.
Aw, I love that. That's nice.
That's cool. Well, we're approaching kind of the end of the show, and I wanted to bring a little attention to your band.
Mhm.
So you've actually been in a couple of bands, and you've actually toured in over 10 countries. Your current band is called Jet Jaguar. What can you tell us about your band?
Well, we just changed our name to Jet Jag
Oh,
because we haven't announced that yet or whatever.
Gotcha.
But there's too many Jet Jaguars out there. But it was named after a character in Godzilla. It was the robot guy in
Gotcha.
the original Godzilla. But yeah, I mean we started and we had such great momentum, and we did a tour with Handguns to Keep Flying, and we got an agency. We released like a song and it did well, and then pandemic hit. So we just been like chilling, and we just recorded a new EP, and we're like getting the art and the mixes and figuring that out. So probably in a couple months we're gonna release stuff.
Nice. Well, I did want to play a song of yours called Anvil. Can you tell us about that song?
Yeah, it's like our first phase of a band. We were trying to be sort of like a heavier pop punk band with like influence from like old school rock bands like Thin Lizzy and stuff. So we have like a dual guitar solo. We just wanted something
That's
weird
cool.
and like crazy to come out, and it did really well, and people really liked it. And then like some hardcore community found it and was like, dude, this sucks. Like,
What?
yeah,
Oh,
like
wow.
That's fucked up.
we had
Fuck
like
them.
it was whatever. We had like a little
Yeah.
beat down part in it, and they just took offense. Like, how dare these like pop punk
What?
kids have a beat down thing? Whatever. I mean, it
Aw.
somehow got into their mailbox, so I'm not mad about it, But yeah, so I mean, we're sorta in the same vein as how we sounded. I just think we're a little bit more like straight up, just like punky rock now.
Yeah.
Very cool. So here is Anvil by Jet Jag.
Darkness, pitch black. Maybe then I'll have the peaceful bliss. I last so close to giving in. The death has my address, and he keeps on knocking. rock, that's why I'd rather die alone than live stuck. Cause everyone I've ever known, I've lost. Should've seen everyone I've ever known, I've lost. Should've seen it coming. Hey, I'm rusting away like my board in the rain, stuck inside for days, days, days. I let my phone just ring till everyone stopped calling. I'm staring at the ceiling, wishing I was somebody else. I wanna be someone else, somebody, somebody else, somebody, somebody else. Because my heart is my hell and my head is my jail. And now the only thing I feel is being crushed by an anvil. Wishing I was somebody else. I wanna be someone else. Somebody, somebody else. Somebody, somebody else. Because my heart is my hell and my head is my jail. And now the only thing I feel is being crushed by an anvil.
And welcome back to the show, everyone. So the last part of the show, I normally say, what would you like to say to your fans, which I will also say to you, but also, since you're a producer, kind of like a side question. So what would you like to say to your fans? And also, what would you like to say to maybe any unsigned bands who might be watching?
I would just say, like, I can't wait till shows are back and we're all going to play shows together. And it's going to be crazier than ever. All the venues are shut down, so we got to play basements, and we're going to build a new community and take over the world. Rock is back. MGK is a thing. Travis Barker will notice this and bring us all to the top. You know, it'll be fine. It'll all
Good
be fine.
answer.
Yeah,
I
we just
love
need a couple
that.
months, and we're all going to rip shows together again.
That
That's
is
it.
the
Hell
best
yes.
answer we've had so
Right?
far.
Awesome.
That's
Hell yeah.
awesome.
Right on. Well, Pete, man, it was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
For those at home, I'll have a link down below where you can find Pete, his website, his bands, also on Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, Apple Music, all of the normal things. Link down below. Next band will be this weekend, so please come back, like, and subscribe. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you on the next one.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.